Hello there everybody, how is it going and how have you been? I am EuclideanSqd, and we're back here in Duel Links for a brand new event in the 5Ds world. As you can see, Jack Atlas has started to show up. Now, unfortunately, he is not available for unlock at this moment, nor is his signature card, Red Dragon Archfiend, available. He's just showing up as a roaming duelist, similar to the Inglorious Bastion event that just ended maybe about a week ago. But again, mechanically, it's the exact same as other roaming duelists. He shows up randomly, you duel him, hopefully you get cards, he vanishes for a while. You know, you've done one event like this, you've done them all. So, let's go ahead and take a look at the farming deck, and anybody that has seen some of the previous farming event tutorial videos that I've done will notice that this deck is very familiar. And that's because it turns out that this deck was really good against Zane, this deck was pretty good against Trudge, and this deck is also really good against Jack. So, I don't see any reason to mess with something that isn't broken. Like, part of why I love this deck is just because of how absolutely cheap it is, and yet it's still incredibly effective for that. Like, I've only lost to Jack twice, and that's because I just didn't draw a monster, and it's like, well, what are you going to do in that situation? But anyway. You may notice, especially since it's down in the card history, that I have modified the deck a little bit. I've removed the Shards of Greed and added Jars of Greed just to make it even cheaper than it previously was. And because Jack doesn't actually have quite as much drawing power as somebody like Zane does for his deck. Jack can search for a few cards, but not nearly as much as Zane, and it doesn't nearly get out of hand like it can with Zane, so I figured the extra power from Shards of Greed isn't super necessary against Jack, and the one card draw from Jar of Greed should be sufficient, especially when combined with the 3 Pot of Benevolences to keep putting cards back into Jack's deck to keep him from decking out. But otherwise, this deck is identical to the last time I've shown it off. You use the 3 Cloudians, as well as the field spell, the Sanctuary in the Sky, or Spirit Barrier to just set up an impenetrable barrier for Jack. The Spirit Barrier and Sanctuary in the Sky block all battle damage, and the Cloudians can't be destroyed in battle, so Jack will basically just sit there wailing on one, unable to do any damage, and it's actually kind of hilarious. And while that's going on, you have the Golden Ladybugs in your hand to regain life points, so that on the last turn of the game you contribute summon for Neo-Parshoth, and then its effect that says, while the Sanctuary in the Sky is on the field and your life points are higher than your opponent's, this card gains attack and defense equal to the difference, will go off. So put simply, if you're at like 12,000 life points and Jack is still sitting at 4,000, Neo-Parshoth gains 8,000 attack points and can very easily one-shot Jack with a single attack. More often than not, can even do 10,000 through a monster, so not at all that difficult. As I mentioned last time I showed off this deck, Neo-Parshoth is only available using a super rare ticket, so I don't know if the login tickets work. I know for a fact that the super rare tickets you can get from participating in the PvP arena do. So if you are missing Neo-Parshoth, you may have to go grind in the PvP arena for a little bit to actually get one, but all you need is one. And in fact, as I'm thinking about it, I'm pretty sure that anti-magic arrows is completely optional. I'm trying to go through in my head, and I don't think Jack has any spell or trap cards that can interrupt an attack. I think all of his spells... Let's see, one lets him search for a monster, one lets him draw, one is an equip spell, and then in terms of traps, I think the only thing I've ever seen him use is Powerful Rebirth, so pretty sure anti-magic arrows is optional. I'm keeping it in just for my peace of mind, but if you are missing a copy of this card, you should be a-okay to farm Jack with this deck without it. I'm pretty sure that it's not required. I just don't really trust the computer. So, yep, same standard Cloudian farming applies. Put a Cloudian on the field as fast as you can. Put one of the spell or trap, the Sanctuary or Spirit Barrier, down as fast as you can. And Jack can't do anything. He has no spell and trap destruction. He has no monster destruction, so he's stuck. So, Farming strategy explained. Let's take a look at Jack's rewards. So first off, we have extra Veiler. Can't say that word. A 2-star spellcaster with 600 attack and 200 defense. When your opponent special summons a monster, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, your opponent takes any effect damage you would have taken from their card effects this turn instead. So I'm not super duper sure how often that second effect is going to go off, but it can be a nice card just because if your opponent does special summon something during their turn, you can throw down extra Veiler, this thing, in defense mode to eat an extra attack if necessary. So that's good, I guess. Next we have Small Piece Golem, a 3-star rock with 1100 attack and 0 defense. When this card is summoned, if you control a Big Piece Golem, you can special summon one Medium Piece Golem from your deck. That monster's effect is negated while it is face up on the field. As you will see with Medium Piece Golem, this is just to keep a sort of chain summoning sequence from going on. Next up we have a very interesting card. This is Power Invader, a 5-star fiend with 2200 attack and 0 defense. If your opponent controls 2 or more monsters, you can normal summon this card without tributing. And that's a bit of an interesting effect because it doesn't care how many monsters you have. I mean, obviously to the extent that you have room to play this card. But if you control 2 monsters and your opponent controls 2 monsters, you can still normal summon this thing without tributing, which generally is... that's generally a condition that keeps monsters like this from being played. Usually they will say, if your opponent controls monsters but you don't, you can normal summon without tributing. But Power Invader doesn't do that, so pretty interesting card. Probably has plenty of use. Fiend decks will probably like it just because it's a nice beefy monster to come out at some point. But next we have Mad Archfiend, a 4-star fiend as well with 1800 attack and 0 defense. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. And if this face-up attack position card is targeted for an attack, you can change it to defense position. So it's basically going to die whenever it gets attacked. Because the changing to defense position is not optional. It cannot stay in attack mode if something tries to attack it. It has to go into defense mode, which means it will basically die to anything. But fairly high attack power, and it does piercing damage, so can't complain. Again, it's a fiend, so there's fiend cards out there that can support it. And here's the Medium Piece Golem that I mentioned. So this is a 4-star rock with 1600 attack and 0 defense. In case you're noticing a trend, not many of Jack's cards have defense points. But when this card is summoned, if you control a Big Piece Golem, you can special summon one Small Piece Golem from your deck. That monster's effect is negated while it is face up on the field. Like I mentioned, that's just so, you know, if you use this thing to summon a small piece, you can't then use that small piece to summon a medium piece, and then use that medium piece to summon a small piece. I mean, that's how it would work in a standard Yu-Gi-Oh game where you have 5 monster card zones instead of 3, but, you know, it's just to keep chain summoning, or to keep these things from just swarming the field too easily. And pardon me as I just double check. Yes, I am recording. Okay. Next up, the first of the super rares, we have Descending Lost Star. This is a trap card. Target one synchro monster in your graveyard. Special summon that target in defense position, but its effects are negated, its level is reduced by 1, its defense becomes 0, also its battle position cannot be changed. So you can use this to summon a synchro from your graveyard to absorb an attack in a pinch. Again, it will die very quickly just because it is forced into defense position and its defense is set to 0, so anything can destroy it. But if you're clever and you have level 1 tuners in your deck, you can use your level 1 tuner to combine with the synchro monster, which has now lost a star, to create a new version of that synchro. So for example, you use this thing to special summon Stardust Dragon. Stardust Dragon goes down to a level 7, you summon your level 1 tuner, tune the now level 7 Stardust to create a brand new level 8 Stardust. A little complicated, but again, pretty nice trap card. Next we have Flare Resonator, a 3-star Fiend tuner with 300 attack and 1300 defense, the exception so far to the low defense rule. And any synchro monster that uses this card as a synchro material gains 300 attack, so it just gives a solid attack buff to anything that you use it with. So pretty nice little tuner. Next we have Lancer Archfiend, yet another exception to the 0 defense rule. A 4-star fiend with 1600 attack and 1400 defense. Once per turn, when a monster you control declares an attack targeting a defense position monster your opponent controls, you can activate this effect. If you do, during this battle, the attack of the attacking monster is greater than the defense of the defense position monster it battles, inflict the difference as battle damage. Long story short, basically if any monster you control tries to attack something in defense mode, Lancer can give it piercing battle damage for that one battle only. So, pretty cool card considering it just gives anything you want piercing. So your big monster suddenly does piercing. Another slightly stronger monster can do piercing. Very nice little card. Next we have Big Piece Golem, a 5-star rock with 2100 attack and 0 defense. If your opponent controls a monster and you control no monsters, you can normal summon this card without tributes. So that's kind of how you can get around any sort of tribute summoning that would slow down the effect of the golems. So you summon Big Piece, and then next turn you summon Medium Piece, or you special summon Medium Piece on that same turn, and then you can summon Small Piece, or whatever. And then finally we have the ultra rare, which is Multiple Piece Golem, a fusion between Big Piece and Medium Piece, and 2600 attack, 1300 defense. At the end of the battle phase, if this card attacked or was attacked, you can return it to the extra deck. Then if all of the fusion material monsters that were used for the fusion summon of this card are in your graveyard, you can special summon them. So, if Multiple Piece Golem attacks and your opponent does something to weaken it, or any sort of situation like that, if Multiple Piece Golem gets inflicted with some kind of a negative effect, you can return it to your extra deck and bring the Big Piece and the Medium Piece back to your field instead. Still need some kind of a fusion card to recreate Multiple Piece Golem, but it's a good way of getting rid of unwanted effects. So with that, let's go ahead and duel against Jack. And his farming strategy, as you will see, new little loading screen tips. I just noticed that. Ideally, this duel will go along pretty much the same as any other time I've used this Cloudian deck, and in fact I draw the perfect opening hand. So, because I don't really have to worry about it too much, you can listen to Jack's cool battle music. And in terms of cards to watch out for in his deck, well, for one, if you were trying to farm him, be mindful of the cards that he can use to search for other ones. This spell card, for example, Resonator Call, lets him add any of his Resonator tuners from his deck to his hand, and he does have quite a few of those little things. He also has this Synchro Boost, which gives his monsters, which gives the equipped monster 500 extra attack and an extra level. Frequently, he will do that to combine it with a tuner to create his signature card, Red Dragon Archfiend. So, yeah, AI has it, AI has access to that card, but we don't yet. Which, to be fair, considering Red Dragon Archfiend's effect, it makes a lot of sense. And we're actually going to go ahead and see it here. So, here's Red Dragon Archfiend. This is far and away the strongest card in his deck. Not to say the rest of his deck is a pushover, it's just that this thing is really powerful. Yeah, so... Oh, and he's Synchro Summoning for another one. Because all three of the cards in his extra deck are Red Dragon Archfiends. So, this thing is a 3000 attack point dragon with... there's an 8-star Synchro. And his deck is very, very good at creating conditions so that he can perform an 8-star Synchro. As you just saw, he will use Synchro Boost to increase the monster's level by 1 and make, work with the level 3 of his Resonator monsters. He will use Powerful Rebirth to revive a Resonator, to revive something else, increase its level by 1, and do the same thing. And if you're trying to dual jack normally, these things are going to be incredibly dangerous for you. After damage calculation, if this card attacks the defense position monster your opponent controls, you get to destroy all defense position monsters your opponent controls. So you can't defend against this thing, because he will just use it to attack something in defense mode, and then all of your defenses are wiped and everything else on his field gets to attack you directly. Pardon me as I just double check the cards in his deck. Yeah, I can do that. Let's go ahead and just use a Pot of Benevolence real quick. Probably should have done that the turn previously, but I wasn't thinking. But anyway, do that. I'm not going to get rid of that trap card because that's just sitting there taking up a slot for him. But Red Dragon Archfiend's second effect says that during your end phase, destroy all other monsters you control that did not declare an attack this turn. This card must be face up on the field to activate and to resolve this effect. So basically, Red Dragon Archfiend says that if any of Jack's monsters don't attack, they self-destruct at the end of the turn. Now, in the case of the Cloudian deck, both of these problems are solved. Your Cloudians are never going to go into defense mode because they self-destruct immediately in that case. And so long as you have the field spell or the continuous trap to protect your life points, he can pound on them all he wants and you're never going to get hurt. This does mean that if he gets 2 Red Dragon Archfiends on the field like he does right now, the farms will take a little bit longer than normal, because the AI understands that if either Red Dragon Archfiend does not attack, the effect of the other will destroy it. So in an effort to keep both dragons alive, it will just attack with both every single turn, and that just adds a few seconds every time. Again, you're in no danger, it just eats up some time. But yeah, he's very good at creating Red Dragon Archfiend. And pretty much every time that I've dueled him, he's synchro summoned the thing. So that's like 10 duels, 12 duels so far. And that thing is showing up pretty much every single time. Now, aside from Red Dragon Archfiend, as you may have noticed, he has cards like Powerful Rebirth, he has cards like Synchro Boost that give his monsters more attack power, so it can also be kind of difficult to fight him in a more standard duel, just because his monsters can quickly get more powerful than yours are. And also in terms of farming him and just other things to watch out for, he has that the spell card Resonator Call, and he also has this thing, Wandering King Wildwind. I'm going to draw really quick and use the Golden Ladybugs just because those are going to overwrite the thing. But basically this card says that if you control a Fiend type tuner with 1500 or less attack, like any of the Resonators, this thing can be special summoned from the hand. And if you attempt this, you cannot special summon monsters except for synchro monsters, which is what Jack is all about, so it doesn't matter. And during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, you can banish it from your graveyard to add a Fiend type tuner with 1500 or less attack from your deck to your hand. So this thing is another way that Jack can search out tuners to synchro summon for his Red Dragon Archfiend. So if you're using a deck like mine and you happen to have a Pot of Benevolence, don't do what I did and leave that thing in the graveyard. Return that thing to the deck as quickly as possible if you can. In terms of the tuners, he has that Dark Resonator, which I think says it has to be attacked twice to be destroyed. Don't actually. Yeah. The first time this card would be destroyed by battle each turn, it is not destroyed. So if he sets this thing in defense mode, it can pretty easily survive during the early duel. He has Flame Resonators, or Flare Resonators, which give more attack power to the Red Dragon Archfiends. He has, what's the last one? It's a Clock Resonator, which I believe says if this card is in defense mode, it can't be destroyed in battle, I think. I'll have to see if it shows up, but it's something to do with it being in defense mode. I remember that much, I just don't remember the specifics of it. yeah, he's got several level 3 tuners, and he's very good at making the rest of his monsters compatible for the level 8 Synchro Summon. Also in his deck, he has Twin Sword Marauder, which, once per battle phase, if this card attacks its defense position monster, it can make a second attack in a row. And whenever it attacks something in defense mode, it does piercing damage. So, there's that to deal with. Yeah, let's go ahead and use the Pot of Benevolence again. Send those back. Let's see, he has that Mad Archfiend, which I just read its effect. I believe does piercing damage. I'm pretty sure I've seen Lancer Archfiend in this deck, which gives piercing damage to other things. So, in case the trend isn't super obvious, his deck is very good at dealing damage to you, even if you are defending. So, regular duels against this guy can be pretty tough, depending on how it plays out. Go ahead and set the Jar of Greed, just keep ending the turn. Might as well activate it now, because why not? Hey, another Jar of Greed, cool. I'm just kind of watching for the Clock Resonator, honestly, because I kind of want to check its effect again. Also trying to think. I have noticed that whenever Jack gets 2 Red Dragon Archfiends on the field, he will generally not summon a third monster. I'm not entirely sure why this is. Oh, there's Mad Archfiend. Yeah, Mad Archfiend also deals piercing damage, so lots of things that do piercing damage, lots of Red Dragon Archfiend destroys your defense modes, so almost worthless putting stuff in defense position against this guy. So just keep that in mind if you're trying to make a deck of your own to fight him. But, yeah, I'm not entirely sure why he doesn't summon a third monster when he's got 2 red dragons on the field. I'm guessing it has something to do with the destroy them if they don't attack effect, but I mean, he can see the attack of all 3 of my monsters. He could very easily play anything else and just keep smacking at them and it would survive the whole turn, so not super sure why he's doing this, or why he does this, but he does. Generally, if he gets 1 Red Dragon Archfiend on the field, in my personal experience, he will sometimes summon something like a Mad Archfiend or a Twin Sword Marauder alongside it, but I rarely see him actually normal summon a tuner afterwards to create a second one. Generally, if he's going to create 2, I've seen him do it in the same turn or just not at all. So there is that. Any form of Synchro Destruction will stop the red dragons. Anything that gets rid of that deals with special summon monsters will work. So just be mindful with this guy, because he can very easily overpower you if he wants to. Let's go ahead and activate the Golden Ladybugs. And this is partly why I said that I think the anti-magic arrows aren't entirely necessary for farming Jack, because I've very frequently seen him get into a situation where he's only got the 1 face down spell and trap card, just because he has 3 copies of Synchro Boost. I believe he's got 2 powerful rebirths. So frequently his back row will get clogged up with other cards, and you usually won't have to worry about it. You may have to deal with 1 face down, but in the case of this deck, I can just use Acid Cloud to get rid of it. He's going to activate it and revive something anyway, but you know, that's a whatever situation. Oh, there's Clock Resonator. Sorry, just real quick. There it is. This is the last resonator he has. Clock resonator. Oh. Once per turn, this face-up defense position card cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. Okay. So, Dark Resonator says it basically has to be attacked and beaten twice. Clock Resonator can protect itself from card effects, but only if it's in defense mode. So, a little bit of a give and take, but again, it's mostly just another 3-star tuner that Jack's going to use to create the Red Dragon Archfiends. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and use these Surstratuses to destroy the Red Dragons, because I want to. And generally, one thing I've started to do with this deck is, if I can, I'll have 3 Surstratus up until the end of the game, and then I use all 3 of their effects to destroy all 3 monsters that the opponent has. And this just guarantees that Neo Parshoth can attack directly, just in case my life points happen to be low enough for him to not quite get to 10,000 damage if he has to attack through something. But in this case, it doesn't matter, because I got to 20,000, that's more than enough to deal with Jack. Anti-magic arrows, just to make sure. Attack the Twin Sword, and 16,900 damage. Goodbye. And there you go. Just like I said at the start, just like Zane, Jack can do absolutely nothing to the Cloudians. It's like, on the one hand, I'm super duper fine with it, because it means that this super cheap farming deck is good against yet another event duelist. Like I mentioned, it's really easy to put together considering all of them are normals and rares. The 2 exceptions, I think, are Sanctuary in the Sky and Spirit Barrier. Spirit Barrier because it's a card drop from a duelist, I believe Bastion, and Sanctuary in the Sky because I think you have to cash in R tickets, but you get those pretty quickly. So yeah, that's part of why I love this deck, is because it's really cheap and it's really, really damn effective. So yeah, not much more to say, but that's the first Jack Atlas event. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all had a great time, and I hope you all have a great day. And I will see you all next time.